Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the third of three webinars where we're talking about Discover the Foundations for Store Operations. So welcome. I'm Matt Roberts, Account Director at Trust Systems, and I'm joined by Nabilah from Cisco. Nabilah, if you want to say a couple of words.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Nabilah. I'm the Associate Systems Engineer for Meraki IoT in EMEA.
Thank you very much. So a little bit about Trust before we start. We're a managed service provider with 20 plus years of experience across the full spectrum of digital signage and also end user experience. We take what we do very seriously, which is make sure that our customers get the best out of their technology as possible. With that in mind, we do listen and keep our eyes open for trends in the market. And ultimately, what we're seeing at the moment is people are looking to improve the customer experience and satisfaction, transform store operations by making your stores smarter. In doing that, save money, simplify operations, which again can help reduce capital expenditure, and also look to help you reach sustainability targets, which, as we all know, there's a huge push from supply chain, consumer requirements. People are asking about it all the time, so it's something that we want to help our customers achieve. So that's enough about me and about Trust. Over to you, Nabilah.
Hi, everyone. Today I'll be talking about the Meraki cameras and sensors and how you can use these to improve operational efficiency. As we already said, I'm Nabilah. I've got my email on there as well. And yeah, let's just get started. So firstly, I'll talk a little bit about the Meraki Vision. So this is our range of smart cameras. Now, in terms of your traditional camera architecture, you'll usually have your cameras and then some sort of NVR or a DVR, and often you'll have servers on site as well to store all of that footage, and then any other monitors or external hardware devices for storage and so on. Now, with this kind of architecture, you'll see that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of cost to maintain all of that and to keep all of that running. Now, if we look at the Meraki camera architecture, what we can see is everything is on the edge on the camera. So everything is straight out of the box. The video is processed and stored on the camera itself, which completely eliminates the need for an NVR or a DVR or any other servers. And you can access the footage on the cameras either locally by being connected to the same network as the cameras, or even remotely via the Meraki cloud. So already there's a lot of savings there by getting rid of the NVRs, the DVRs, the servers, and anything else within that process that you might need in a traditional architecture. Now, what our cameras also offer is a centralized cloud management. What that essentially means is that you can manage, configure, view, make changes to the cameras all in one single pane of glass, the Meraki dashboard, which I will demonstrate later on. That also allows things like advanced analytics, motion searching, and extra features that you might not previously get. And what you can do is turn these analytics into actionable insights and analytics. So looking at things like counting people, counting busiest areas of a building or a store, counting what times are the busiest. And based off these, you can make decisions to the business in terms of how many people that you want on the floor at that time, or how much heating you might think is necessary. On top of that, all of the footage is encrypted, both at rest and in transit, meaning that no matter where it is safe and it is secure. We also offer optimized retention, meaning that you can really choose and customize how long the footage is retained for. And as mentioned, all of the footage is stored on the device. And we have a range of different storage options for the cameras. So we have storage ranging from 128 gigabytes all the way up to a terabyte of storage. So there really is more than enough space on the cameras for that storage. But you can also choose which footage to retain. And we also offer really granular access control in terms of who can access which cameras in the network, who can access which networks, and so on. And again, I'll demonstrate that in a little more detail later on. Now, what we can see on the bottom left-hand side of the slide is the range of our indoor and outdoor cameras. And a lot of these outdoor cameras can actually be used indoors as well. So they're very versatile and very flexible. We have dome cameras, fixed lens cameras, fisheye cameras, varifocal lens cameras, and bullet cameras for long distance as well. Now, all of these cameras are very safe and secure. They're IK10 rated and IP67 rated. So IK10 rated essentially meaning that they can withstand a lot of brute force. So I think around 5 kg impact being dropped from about 40 centimeters above it. So essentially it can handle some tampering and vandalism. And the IP67 is a weather rating, so it can withstand extreme weather conditions. So whether that's a really hot condition, really cold, rainy, windy, and so on, it can withstand all of that. Now, in terms of reducing CapEx and OpEx, these cameras can do a lot. As I mentioned already, you'll get 30% reduced energy costs with less hardware needed compared to the legacy solution. So you're no longer having to power on these NVRs, DVRs, and servers on site. You only need to power the cameras themselves and then any device that you use to access the footage. You'll find a 43% return on investment within 3 years with a payback period of just 10 months. So again, there are huge benefits to be reaped from that. 75% savings on maintenance costs and reduced time spent configuring, maintaining, and updating cameras. Everything can be done from the dashboard from one central single pane of glass. So when it comes to configuring the cameras, you can do that very easily in the dashboard and then roll out those settings to the rest of the cameras. In terms of maintenance, it's very easy to stay on top of if there are any issues with any of the cameras, if any of them are alerting, and so on. And 98% time saving to access and share footage. So again, I'll demonstrate that later on how easy and how quick it is to find the footage that you're looking for. Now let's have a look at the Meraki sensors now. So these are our MT sensors. So MV was for Meraki Vision and MT is Meraki Things, Internet of Things, that kind of thing. So these are our sensors. Now we have a range of indoor sensors that can be used for a range of different things. Now, firstly, I'll explain how they work. So the MT sensors connect to the dashboard through what we call a gateway. So either a Meraki wireless access point, an MR, or a Meraki camera, an MV. And it connects to that through BLE connectivity, so Bluetooth Low Energy. We chose to make it this way so that there aren't any extra vulnerabilities in the network. Let's say if it was to connect directly to the internet, that could be a potential risk and vulnerability. We've heard stories of people having their network compromised because it's been hacked through their air conditioning. So by reducing any of those vulnerable points in the network, that's the safest thing that we can do. Now, in terms of the sensors themselves, we've got the MT10, the MT12 and the MT20 that are ideal for infrastructure monitoring. So think of network closets or data center rooms, that kind of thing. Having the MT12 water leak sensor is really vital. So if there is any sort of leak, whether that's from the air conditioning or anywhere else, you wouldn't want those servers to be destroyed by water damage. And having the MT12 will alert you immediately once any water leakage has been detected. And then you can then remediate that issue very quickly rather than waiting until it's too late. And then all of a sudden you've got a huge amount of loss and a huge cost to fix that. Similarly, the MT10 does temperature and humidity. So it's very important to manage the heating and the cooling in these kinds of environments. And the MT10 ensures that the temperature and humidity is where you would expect it to be. And again, it will alert you when it isn't. The MT20, the door open close sensor, can be used in a couple of different ways. So you could use that to gain insight into how often different rooms are being used. So whether that's a meeting room or just a certain room, you can count how many times that door is being opened and closed. Or you could have it on a more sensitive room, so as a store cupboard, for example, or the network closet. And if you're not really expecting a lot of usage of that door, then you can set that sensor to alert you when that does open, or you can have that connect with a camera, which will then automatically take a snapshot of that door whenever it is opened or closed, so you can see exactly who's come in or who's come out and exactly at what time. The MT40, the smart power controller, is one of our more recent sensors that we've put out. And what this does is it monitors the energy usage of different appliances. So if you plug this in to, let's say, a printer or a meeting device or a coffee machine, whatever that is, you'll be able to monitor the usage of it. And you'll also be able to remotely switch that off. So let's say at the end of the day, you want to power down a couple of devices that you know are not going to be used overnight or over the weekend, for example. You can remotely switch that off and then switch that back on again when you next need it, which saves a lot of energy. As we can see from the statistics in terms of reducing the CapEx and reducing the OpEx, there are a lot of savings, 175% return on investment within the first 12 months. So just by making a couple of those changes, you'll have a huge return on that investment. Now, I'll speak a little bit about the MT14 and the MT15. So these are the indoor air quality sensors, and they monitor the overall indoor air quality by looking at things like the temperature, the humidity, but also the ambient noise levels, the CO2 levels, any TVOC that is found in the air. So that's total volatile organic compounds, and just combining that to provide readings into the air quality. And again, you can turn those insights into actionable insights. If you see that the air quality is depleting, you can automate that to perhaps switch on the air conditioning or to open a couple of windows, that kind of thing. The MT11 is a temperature probe for cold storage. So for fridges, any sort of fridges with perishable goods, for example, you can set that to take the temperature at whatever time that you want, so at regular intervals, and then you can get those temperature readings to ensure that the fridges are staying at the temperature that you need them to stay at in order to keep everything fresh and good. And finally, the MT30, the automation button, you can use this to do essentially anything really. You can automate it to send off a SMS or a webhook or a push notification. You can integrate it with the Wi-Fi or with the lights to switch them on or off. For example, if you've got this next to a coffee machine and the coffee machine is broken or the beans have run out, somebody can just press that button and it will automatically send a notification to the relevant people to fix that. Or if you're on a shop floor and you've got this button there, if somebody presses it and they need some assistance, it can then send a push notification or an SMS to the staff working on the floor that day, and then one of them can go and tend to that customer. So it really is very versatile for any sort of use case. And again, 50% savings on installation and maintenance cost with reduced time spent configuring, cabling, and integrating. So these sensors are very easy to install and to put up. A lot of these are battery operated, other than the MT15, which does require a PoE cable just because of the higher sampling rate, and also the MT40, which does need to be plugged in line of a power line. The rest of the sensors are all battery operated and do have long life, so it really does reduce any need for lots of cabling and integrating it into a network in some other way. And so on. So that makes the job really easy. 43% reduction in unplanned downtime. So as I was mentioning about sort of monitoring that critical infrastructure, the network servers and so on, by being able to have very quick reactive responses to any sort of leakages or any sort of damages in that environment, you can save a lot. Again, 35% reduction in loss of assets. You can save hundreds and thousands pounds worth of potential damage by being alerted of that immediately rather than only finding out when it was too late. And finally, 27% overall reduction in energy consumption. So by being able to monitor the energy and being able to do that sort of remote powering down, you can save a lot of energy that way. And again, having those insights into different elements of the indoor environment allows you to make those differences and those business decisions, which will then help to lead to reduction in energy consumption. Now, we've got a couple of case studies and use cases that I will just briefly touch over before moving on to the demo. Firstly, here we have Bossa Nova, which is a developer of advanced robotics technology, and they used our MT sensors to avoid losses of their robots. So their robots are very costly, and if there are any issues with a switch failure, for example, that was caused by a heat problem with the air conditioning, for example, so they've had temperature related issues in the past. By utilizing our MT sensors, they've been able to make sure that they can monitor the temperature even without having anybody physically there. So previously they would have to have one of the IT staff go around and do a manual walk around to check that the temperature of everything is okay. but this just wasn't really an efficient option to have. So by using the sensors, they can remotely monitor that, and they can also get alerts in real time if there is any sort of issue, which has prevented more of these robots getting ruined. So it's very simple and easy to use and very effective for what it does. The next use case is a little more about the cameras. So this was a university in the States, and they had 6,000 students on their campuses. And it was only after an incident had occurred when a stranger had entered into the women's campus, the women's dorms on the campus, when they were trying to find the footage. It was only then that they realized that quite a few of their cameras weren't actually working and they didn't even know it. And secondly, the amount of time that it took to actually find that footage was just far too long. As you can see on the quote there, they had 2 team members who had to physically travel from each of the locations, so each of the different dorms or the different buildings, to physically access the servers there to view the footage, to finally find, good enough footage of the person they were looking for, which is just a very long process. Whereas after they implemented the Meraki cameras, they can now do that within minutes, remotely, without having to go to all these different servers to manually check them all. They can find it. And there's also more of a proactive sense of security rather than just reactive. So in real time, if there is somebody there and they can see that, they can get an alert, for example. So the security team receives text and emails alerts if there's people in certain areas when they shouldn't be. It just makes the overall environment so much safer. And the final case study is Mobile One, which is a T-Mobile store. So they were looking at replacing their entire legacy system, and they realized $500,000 in savings over 5 years by replacing their legacy NVRs. So by using the Meraki cameras, they no longer needed NVRs and they could get rid of them. And the NVRs were costing a lot of money to run, to maintain, and so on. So by replacing them, they've had huge savings. Furthermore, they deployed the cameras in 230 retail locations in less than 3 months with only 2 IT employees, which is quite impressive. And that just really reiterates how simple it can be to deploy the Meraki cameras and how easy we've made it in terms of that remote configuration, the remote management, and so on. And being able to use features like camera profiles, which I'll explain in the demonstration as well, to just make that whole process very seamless, very easy. So I'll move on to the demo. So what we have here is the Meraki dashboard. Now, what we can see is the list of all the networks in our organization. So this is the Meraki organization. So we've got a lot of networks. If you have one network, you'll see one network. If you have multiple, you'll see them all. Now, for this demonstration, we'll use the Meraki San Francisco office network. Now, what we'll see when I click into this is, I'll give it a second to load through. But what we will see is an overview of the entire network. Now, obviously, in this network, we've got switching, wireless, and so on. If you have cameras and sensors in your network only, then you'll only see cameras and sensors. Or if you have a user that you only want them to only be able to see the cameras and sensors, then they can only see those. Obviously, we've got a range of things here, so that's why we can see them. But let's just skip over to cameras, which is what we're interested in today. So if I hover over cameras here and then click onto cameras, I'll be brought with a list of all the cameras in that network. I'll also be able to see how many are online, how many are offline, if any of them are alerting, and how many are dormant. So as we can see, thankfully, we've got none offline and none alerting, 37 online, and we do have 4 that are dormant, which simply means that they've been disconnected from the network for 2 weeks or more. So we can look into that and see. Now, what we can see here is we've got a very nice list of all the cameras that we've got. We can also see the MAC address, the model, and so on. Now, I personally am not interested in the MAC address, so I can simply just click onto the settings cog here and select which columns I actually want to see and don't want to see. So I don't want to see the MAC address, but I do want to see the tags. Now what I can see is the tags that have been assigned to these cameras, which group them together very nicely. So I can click on all the second floor cameras or all the indoor cameras and so on. Now, one of the cameras that we'll look into is, let's have a look. Let's have a look at a staircase camera. So you can search by the name of the camera, any of the tags assigned to it, or the model of the camera itself. It's very easy and intuitive to use the interface, as you can see. Now, once this loads up, what we can see is the footage in real time. Now, this is in San Francisco, and I am in Manchester, England. So while it is almost 1 p.m. here, it's about 4 a.m. over there. But I can just change the time very easily. So I can just type in 12 p.m. yesterday. So I can either use that calendar feature or I can just type it straight in. And what it will do, it will jump straight to that time. Now, what we can see here is across the timeline, we've got a green line indicating that it's online, it's connected, but we have a lot of these orange blocks as well. Now, these orange blocks show when there's been any movement detected in that scene. So if I hover over this, wow, it looks like there's about 30 people on the stairs, but this is actually a condensed image of all of the movement in that time frame. So if I do, you can see we've got one person coming this way, another person coming that way. I think it's just reloading there. So all of these really help you to see when there has been any movement and makes it very easy. Obviously, it is around 12 p.m., so it's about lunchtime, so it would be very busy on the stairs at that time. But if you've got an entrance or an exit, for example, this makes it very easy to identify when there has been any movement there and to be able to jump to those scenes and to find it. Now, the other things that we can also do is analytics. Now, what we can see here is the amount of people that were on the stairwell, the busiest time, as expected, 12 till 1, so around lunchtime, we've got lots of people on the stairs and so on. So this is an area that has been set out. So if I click preview, I can see exactly which area has been configured here to count the amount of people there. And then we can count the people when they're in and when they're out. And we also have motion heat maps as well. Now, in terms of some of the camera settings, the quality and retention, which I mentioned earlier. So if I scroll down to the bottom, I can see that the current estimated retention is 37 days, which is typically more than enough for a lot of organizations. But if we do need that to be longer, I could just knock down the resolution and we've got 180 days. But let's say if I don't want to knock down the resolution, there's a couple of other things that I can do. I can set up a recording schedule. So there are already a couple of schedules already set up here. So we've got weekdays or weekends and so on, or we can just keep it always on. But by having a schedule on, that will definitely increase the amount. And we can also have motion-based retention, which is already enabled, which essentially means that any footage that is older than 3 days where there's been no motion detected whatsoever will be automatically deleted. In terms of motion alerts, we don't have alerts on for this camera because it is a very busy area. But as I mentioned, if it was an entrance or an exit, you could set alerts for that. So you can have them always on or scheduled, again, within any of these time frames. And you can set your own schedule as well. You can choose the motion sensitivity or the event duration for that. And you can also choose to have it as only people detection, or you can also have vehicle detection if it is an outdoor camera. And this is really useful to, if you do have a sensitive area of the building, for example, and you'd like to get alerted if there is a person there out of hours, for example, you'll get that alert straight away. Now, another thing I did want to demonstrate was the Meraki Vision Portal. Now, this is a dedicated window for seeing, searching, and sharing video footage. So as I mentioned on the dashboard, you can make changes to the settings and configurations. On the Vision Portal, you cannot do any of that. So this is ideal for the members of the team who are, security staff, for example, or facilities managers, people that don't really need to make changes to the actual settings themselves, but people that should have access to the footage and be able to share and export that and so on. So it's very similar to the dashboard. You can see the timeline, you can see any motion that's been detected. We also have video walls as well. So when this loads through, you'll be able to see that there's a couple of different camera angles and views all at once. And you can get a very nice view of all of that in one time. So we've got a coffee bar, the bike entryway, for example, the bike room, the stairwells, and so on. The other really intuitive feature here, which saves time when it comes to finding footage, is the event search. Now, what event search does is it really simplifies the process of finding footage that you need. So if we select a couple of these cameras, so let's see which ones I want to choose. So let's say somebody was on the stairs, somebody's broken in, and they've been seen there and they were wearing a red top, for example. So firstly, I've selected the camera that I want. And as we can see, the number is going up and it's finding, if I click people in motion, it will find clips where there's people in motion. But let's say if I do want to search them by the color of their clothing, here I can see there's some red there, red here, and, you know, or let's say if I want them in green, it'll bring up people seen in green. And you can choose the color of their top clothing and their bottom clothing, which just makes that process of searching for something so much easier. And then I can just click onto that, watch the footage, confirm if that's the one, and then export that and download that as an MP4 file or share that as a link internally and so on. So that makes that really, really simple. We'll go back to the dashboard now to have a quick look at the sensors and what you can see from that. So if I hover over sensors here and onto the overview, what we'll see is all of the sensors that are currently alerting. Oftentimes these tend to be door open and close, but what we can see here is an air quality reading. So bad air quality alert. So this is something that we're not expecting, and this is in a lab. So that's definitely something that would be looked into. And again, we can see the doors being open and closed and so on. If we scroll down a little, we can see all of the recent alerts, see exactly which sensor it is, what the triggering value is, and what the alert profile is. So we can see we've got doors being open, temperature alerts, a temperature warning, bad air quality, and so on. Now, if I go into the list of sensors, similar to how many are online, offline, alerting, and dormant. We can also see the alert profiles and more. Now, in terms of alert profiles, these are profiles that are already set up, but it is also very easy to set up new alerts as well. When you add a sensor into the network onto the dashboard, what you'll see is it will often come up with the suggested alert for that sensor. So for an air quality sensor, for example, it will give you the suggested threshold for this counts as bad air quality and so on. So if we actually have a look onto a MT15, for example. So let's have a look at the MT15. What we'll see when this loads up is the range of all the values. So we can see we've got an excellent indoor air quality reading, and it's looking at the temperature, the humidity, TVOC levels, the PM 2.5, which is essentially vape detection, CO2 and ambient noise levels as well. And if we scroll down, we can see the graphs of these as well and what it looks like if it's what we're expecting. What we can see over here at the top is that it's kind of gone a little orange. And now this is based off of the readings and the determinations of what class is as good or bad for this reading. And again, if I click onto the information button, it will tell us about this metric. This is what it means. This is what is inadequate, what's poor, what's excellent, and so on. So that'll really allow you to see that. And again, the CO2, we can see it's kind of peaked around here as well. Around the same time, the TVOC levels peaked as well. So you can really have a look into that. Now, in terms of using these for operational efficiency, we wouldn't want to have bad air quality anywhere, or, you know, high levels of CO2 and so on. The MT15 has an LED indicator on the sensor itself, so you can actually see whether it's green, amber, or red. You can also choose which metric to base that off of. So you can choose the overall indoor air quality, CO2, TVOC, and so on. And then this just gives a visual indicator in real time on what exactly is good and what is bad. And then you can make those sort of actions based off of that. So if it is poor or inadequate, you can open a window, open some doors, let some fresh air in, and so on to make that difference. Now, I'll demonstrate the MT40 now in terms of the energy readings, because this one is quite an important one in terms of making those savings. So let's have a look into one of these MT40s. Now, when this loads up, what we can see is the total usage of energy here, and this is across time as well. And what we can also see are sustainability insights. Now, if I click onto this here, what this means is that there has been some calculations to figure out the estimated cost of the usage of energy and also the greenhouse gas emissions as well. Now, this is really, really powerful because you can see exactly which devices are using, on an estimated number, the cost in electricity or how much the emissions they're contributing to. And this is really useful because if you make changes to this, you can then compare sort of the week before and the week after you've made a change and see if the emissions have gone down, if the cost has gone down, and so on. And you can also compare different devices, different things that you've got it plugged into within the space to see really what is costing the most and what is creating the most emissions. So I will take a pause there. I'll stop sharing my screen there.
So just to wrap up, really, like I said, it's the third of 3 webinars aiming at just showing how we can bring various different systems and ecosystems into one holistic approach so that our customers are working with a single pane of glass, really, and Cisco Meraki are fundamental in helping achieve that. Down the right-hand side, you can see some very impressive names that we work with, which relates back to what I said earlier. We do what we do very well, and we take pride in doing it to the best level possible, which leads quite nicely into the fact that we do have several case studies. One of our more recent ones that's been going up on LinkedIn, social media, and the likes is around the Eon control solutions. I'm not going to take you all the way through this slide because it's quite a wordy one, but again, we will send this to everybody that's attended the webinar today. I know that a lot of people that have joined have got my contact details myself, but if you need to get hold of Nabilah, then feel free to ask me and I can arrange the introduction and we can go from there. But Nabilah, really appreciate your time. That demo was fantastic. It never fails to blow my mind some of the things that you and your team managed to be able to do. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.